All right, buddy. You stepped away from the broadcast booth and joining us in studio to break down the Pirates back in 2017. What have you been up to since we last saw you in the studio?
Been up to a lot. Obviously, part of the reason why I retired when I did from the broadcasting was the fact that the hours were getting tough. The West Coast games starting at 10 o'clock, getting home at 3 o'clock in the morning. My body wasn't adjusting like it used to. Plus, there were a lot of things that I wanted to do that I hadn't been able to do yet. I was spending time with the grandkids, their activities, all the stuff that they do. My old college baseball team, my oldest son is now down there coaching in Marietta. So being able to do that and go watch them play was something that I wanted to do. Just spending more time with the family and the wife, and being able to do things together. Some of them are not as much fun as others. There are doctor's appointments and stuff like that. For the last year, I've been her designated driver, so therefore I'm involved in sitting while she gets her hair done. I sit in the car for an hour with my phone, and I'm playing on it. I've got Wi-Fi in the car now,
there you go.
And a charging cord for my phone, so I got that covered. So there's been a lot of different things that I've been doing, and it's kept me plenty busy during the time. And I've also had time to just sit back and do nothing.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, part of that time became available because of the fact that I used to play a lot of golf.
Yeah.
And my back and my knees finally got to the point where they won't allow me to play anymore.
Nothing.
So I do miss that. I can't play any golf at all. But, sitting in the recliner and watching TV, watching ball games, a lot of things that I can do now that I wasn't able to do before while I was working. And yes, I miss you guys, but it's fun to sit in a chair with a beer next to me and watch the game. And if it's not as good as I would like it to be, or it gets really lopsided, I can click it and go to bed.
You mean you would turn us off?
I will turn you off, yes. As much as I love you, Danny.
Okay, I understand.
I understand. It's part of the bonus of being able to have the clicker in your hand.
Now, if we're going to talk baseball a little bit, I want to ask you about your good friend Jim Leyland. Went into the Baseball Hall of Fame just last summer. Let's stay with a good friend and a former teammate in Dave Parker. Waited a long time to get into the Hall of Fame. What does it mean to you that he's finally doing so, not only as a former player or former teammate, but as a good friend?
It means a lot. What most people don't understand about Dave Parker, because of the way he handled himself publicly and with the media, was the fact, he made it a little difficult for them to identify with him.
Right.
There was a totally different person in the clubhouse. He was very much a teammate. The guy played when he was hurt. He played with broken jaws. Everybody remembers the face mask and all the things that he did. Playing the game, he played every day. Some guys would get a little ache or pain and take themselves out of the lineup if Seaver was pitching or Carlton was pitching, particularly Carlton, because Carlton was not easy for Dave to hit. That slider was, there were some funny swings that Dave had against Carlton, but he played every day when Carlton was pitching because of the fact that he knew he was our best opportunity to win a game. So his personal stuff was out the window, trying to help his teammates win a ball game that night. So that person, that type of player, a guy who was so dedicated to winning the game first, and yes, he contributed a lot, but that wasn't his number one thing. It was, winning for the team and helping his teammates become better and win more games and become, back then you had to win the division to get to the playoffs. So that was his goal every day. So we had a totally different perspective of who Dave Parker was. We knew how good a player he was, but we also knew how hard he worked at what he did and how much he gave to the team. So
Dave Parker, power hitter, hit over 300 home runs during his career. Could you imagine what it would have been like if he had the use of a torpedo bat? And with that thought in mind, what do you think about baseball players in today's game being able to use the torpedo bat?
Well, first of all, I think the jury is still out on torpedo bats. There were a couple of Yankees that used them in the first game, and
Right.
they hit like 9 home runs or something.
Right.
Some ridiculous number. If you hit 9 home runs in a game, it's not the bats. It's probably the opposing pitcher. It's throwing too many balls in the middle of the plate.
Right.
So I think the jury's still out on that. But I don't think it would have mattered to Dave. He was such a good hitter. If you take a little weight out of the end of it, he used a 39-ounce bat. 36 inches, 39 ounces, big barrel, big handle, and was strong enough to swing it. Nowadays the bats are 34 inches, 35 inches at the most, and they weigh 31 or 32 ounces. So they're much lighter. Aluminum bats have changed the kind of bats that these guys grow up swinging. So therefore they want lighter bats, because that's what they're used to. So guys like Dave and Willie who could swing those big bats and move them, I don't know that it would have mattered if it was a torpedo bat or what shape, if they had the ones with the knobs that are, that was the rage a couple of years ago.
Right.
And I haven't seen, watching other players and other teams, that many guys using torpedo bats. It seems like it's the new thing that everybody wants to try, but they're not really sold on them yet, that they're going to give up their regular bats that they know they can hit with. So, it's just like pitchers. I mean, you're not going to change the grip on your slider if your slider is pretty good. I don't think batters are going to change their bats because this new fangled thing came out and they're going to try it. And it's not going to make everybody successful. If you can't hit, you can't hit. If you can hit, you can hit. And it doesn't matter. Our guys used to grab somebody else's bat all the time.
Right.
And they'd hit with those too. So, like I said, if you can hit, you can hit. If you can't, you can't.
Okay, so let's stay with today's game and move from torpedo bats to the pitch clock. As a former pitcher, your thoughts on the pitch clock?
I don't think it would have affected me all that much. I was a pretty quick worker. Typically I knew 2 or 3 pitches ahead if I was making my pitches what the next one was going to be. My intent on most pitches was to throw a strike.
Okay.
And so I threw a minimal amount of pitches. 0-2, I would still be trying to throw a strike. I would just be trying to be real particular about where it was. And my theory was every pitch that I don't throw today is one more I can pitch, I can throw tomorrow. And that was always important to me because I had to pitch multiple days in a row. 2 or 3 in a row was not abnormal. Multiple innings was not abnormal. So if I could save pitches, it made me better the next day. So I worked fast, I threw strikes, so I don't think the clock would have really had an effect on what I did. Now there were other guys that I played with and against that I think it would have bothered them because they were fidgeters and they had to do their whole little routine between pitches and stuff.
Right.
So I think they would have had to make an adjustment, just like I think probably a lot of guys did, when the pitch clock came into place, was the fact that, they were going to have to get rid of the ball in a certain amount of time, and that would be an adjustment for them. But I don't think that would have been the case for me.
We saw the automated ball strike system used during spring training. There's all this thought about trying to get computers involved with the strike zone. I know that Steve Blass likes to talk about the human element of the game. Your thoughts about having a strike zone that would be backed up by a computer and not an umpire behind the plate?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we never dealt with that because we never had any opportunities for that. We knew Of course, it was a little different then. The umpires, there were National League umpires and American League umpires. So you got to know the umpires. You got to know their strike zones. I didn't care if some guys had bigger strike zones than others. I didn't care if it was bigger or smaller. To me, what was important was it was always the same. If the strike zone was the same, I felt like I was good enough to be able to move the ball in a little bit or move it out a little bit to adjust to the strike zone. So that there wasn't a difference for me between umpires. I just had to make an adjustment according to their strike zone. The good news was most of them called the low pitch. That's what I needed. I needed the low ball to be a strike. And I needed it to be a strike if it was 3-2, a man on second with a 1-run lead in the 9th inning. Because I needed to know if I threw the ball in that spot that it was going to be called a strike. The umpires that bothered me are the ones that half the time you threw it there and it was a strike, half the times you threw it there it was a ball. Well, 3-2 with a man on second, you can't afford to throw it there because it might be called a ball. So you had to throw it a little bit more toward the strike zone or toward the better hitting area. So those are the guys I didn't like, the guys that weren't consistent. The guys that were consistent, I felt I was good enough to adjust to. So, we didn't have a box. We didn't have, on TV there was no box.
Right.
The box was invisible, but in my mind, I knew when the guy behind the plate, there was a box and I knew where it was. And that was really what was important to me. Being able to do this and, I don't know that never dealt with it, but I don't know that would have made a difference. You learned how to live with a missed call. Or sometimes the hitter had to learn how to, live with a missed call that went to the pitcher's advantage.
Okay. If we're going to talk about baseball today, I have to ask you about someone who's really taken today's game by storm, and that would be last year's Rookie of the Year, Paul Skenes. What do you think about what he's been able to do in a short time with the Pittsburgh Pirates?
To me, he is a very rare talent. Obviously, he has the size, the weight, the 6'6", 260 pounds. He's got the big body. He has the ability to throw the ball extremely hard. That's all well and good. There's a lot of guys that can do that. What he's got at 22, 23 years old?
Yeah.
What he has is this. He doesn't just throw hard 100-mile-an-hour fastballs all the time. He pitches. He's got 4 or 5 pitches. He uses them all during the game. It's not, getting a certain situation, you know what he's going to throw. You don't. He changes speeds. He does things that most 22, 23-year-olds don't do. He thinks about the game in a different way than most of them do. He's pitching like he's been pitching for 10 years.
Yeah.
He's got major league experience for 10 years. He's learning lessons. He's learned lessons that most guys don't learn until they get later on in their career. I did not know that when I was younger about changing speeds and doing all this. I had the good sinker. I got in trouble. I threw the good sinker. I didn't change speeds. I didn't mix pitches in, game on the line situations. He does that already. And he does it multiple times through the lineup. The guys are seeing him 2 and 3 times in the same game, and he's pitching them differently 2 or 3 times. That's the part of Paul Skenes' game that is, separates him from the rest. He's got the great stuff. He could probably do it the other way better than most, but he's smart enough to understand that over the course of time, he's going to have to change. He's already learning that now. And the longer he goes, the more experience he gets with reading hitters and all the other stuff that most guys have to learn. He will have that experience under his belt, and it'll make him a better pitcher as he moves forward. So I think the sky's the limit for this guy. Like all pitchers, the big key is, can he stay healthy? But that's where the big body comes in. That gives him a better chance than, say, a guy that's smaller that throws that hard. All of a sudden, that body is not going to hold up as well because you're putting more stress on a smaller body. That's the other thing he's got is the big body to absorb the beating that the arm takes when he throws that hard and throws all the different pitches that he throws.
We had some fun with this early in our conversation, so I got to throw it at you. I asked you what Dave Parker may be able to do at the plate if he had a torpedo bat back in the day.
Yeah.
So how do you feel Paul Skenes would fare against the power hitters you faced back in the day?
I think with his advanced approach, that even at this age, he would, I guess probably in the time that I was around, Tom Seaver was a good pitcher. I think the guy that I could compare him to best, and he's probably got more different pitches than the guy, but he's better than most at what he does, was Doc Gooden. I think he is very similar to Doc Gooden in the fact that as a young player coming into the league, he could dominate right away. And he dominated because of good stuff, but also the ability to pitch with good stuff and throw more pitches.